I recently went back to the Henry Dorley Zoo to see just how accessible it is in my electric wheelchair. Last year, my boyfriend and I came here for our anniversary, but at the time I only had a transport chair. By the end of the day, it was exhausting. He had to push me around the entire zoo, and there were plenty of hills and long stretches that were difficult for both of us. Now that I have my electric wheelchair, I wanted to see how different the experience would be. The first thing I noticed was the amount of accessible parking. We got there fairly early and there were plenty of handicap parking spaces available, which made getting in really easy. I also noticed that almost every entrance had an automatic door button. Usually only one of the two doors automatically opens, but honestly it was still a huge help when you're trying to navigate in a wheelchair. One thing I wasn't able to film because there were people around was one of the bathrooms. It had an automatic motion sensor door to enter. I've never seen that on a public restroom before, and I thought it was such a nice accessibility feature. Not every restroom had it, but it was really cool to see. And the accessible stall in the cafe restroom was huge, with plenty of room to maneuver. Our first stop was the Desert Dome. Overall, I was able to get around pretty well. There was one moment where I pulled off to the side and accidentally got stuck, so my boyfriend had to help push me back out. Some of the pathways are definitely more narrow than others, so if people stop in front of you, it's not always easy to go around them like someone walking could. But aside from that, I thought it was very accessible. Right after the Desert Dome, we walked through the nocturnal exhibit with the crocodiles. I will say this area was very dark. Obviously that's intentional since it's designed to stimulate nighttime for the animals, but it made it very difficult to see where I was driving at times. Thankfully, my electric wheelchair has a built-in flashlight, and it ended up being way more useful than I expected. It's not necessarily an accessibility issue, just something to keep in mind if you use a wheelchair or have low vision. Having a light made a huge difference. Next, we went to the aquarium, and honestly, it might have been my favorite building. The pathways were wide, open, and easy to navigate. Last time I came, it was so crowded that I couldn't see many of the exhibits because people were standing in front of everything. This time, being at wheelchair height was still a challenge in some spots, but I absolutely loved the raised viewing area in the penguin exhibit. It let me see over the crowd without any trouble, and I wish more exhibits were designed like that. Then we made our way through the jungle. This was definitely the area that put my wheelchair to the test. For the most part, it was fantastic. There were a couple paths that weren't wheelchair accessible, but I really appreciated that they had alternate accessible routes instead of just leaving you stuck. The only thing I was really disappointed about was not being able to go across the bridge, but that's just part of the design and there was still plenty to explore. It was also pretty wet and humid throughout the jungle, but thankfully my wheelchair handled it without any issues. Now let's talk about the lower part of the jungle. I didn't realize some of those paths were basically off-road trails. They were uneven, unpaved, wet, and you can definitely tell in the videos that my wheelchair was working hard. I had to slow way down to get through them. Personally, I wouldn't recommend taking that route unless you really want to. If I had known it was like that beforehand, I probably would have skipped it. There honestly wasn't much to see down there anyway. Overall, I was really impressed with how accessible the Henry Dorley Zoo is. Having my electric wheelchair completely changed the experience. Hills that would have exhausted me before weren't a problem anymore, and places that would have been difficult in my transport chair were much easier to enjoy. Instead of worrying about keeping up or getting too tired, I was actually able to focus on the animals and enjoy my day. I'd absolutely come back again, and if you're a wheelchair user or someone with limited mobility, I'd definitely recommend visiting. Of course, no place is going to be perfectly accessible, but I thought the zoo did a great job providing accessible parking, automatic doors, accessible restrooms, and plenty of exhibits that were easy to navigate. It was such a fun day, and I can't wait to go back.